Do you remember on May when one envelope changed the NBA forever, sending shockwaves around the world as multiple teams were hoping for that one chance where their lottery ticket got them the jackpot? A new idea was sweeping across the NBA for a draft lottery to avoid tanking going on in the NBA for teams to get the number one overall pick. And the league decided to institute a lottery giving every team that did not make the playoffs a chance at the number one overall pick. And it provided teams with hope. It provided a conspiracy that all collided on one basketball stage. Join us today as we dive into the 1985 NBA lottery, the first of its kind that went on to change the league forever. Today on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide as you daily learn more about sports history, increasing your sports knowledge. Now, to learn about the NBA lottery, we first have to go back to what it was like before. The NBA had what we largely use for most drafts ever since they have started to be held. The worst team gets the first pick, and then the second worst team gets the next pick, and so on and so on and so on. Now, this is a great strategy. It allows the team that had arguably the worst talent, they got the worst record, and that's how they started from 1947 to 1965. Traditional win-loss record with a special territorial pick, which was a draft choice where a team could forfeit their first-round pick and pick a player that played within 50 miles of their home arena, giving them a boost in fanfare. And there were 23 territorial picks in the first iteration of the draft, and 12 of these players ended up being in the Hall of Fame, including players like Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, Jerry Lucas, and it was a big moment, except it made it very hard. Depending on your location, you could have better players around you than other teams. So it made it very difficult. And teams were starting to lose. It made it harder. Teams were starting to lose. And so they introduced in 1966 a coin flip system where the worst team in each conference would determine who would have the first overall pick. The team who lost the coin flip would get the second one. And the rest of the first round would be determined in reverse win-loss order. So it's essentially the same, except you separated the two conferences, East and West, and you had a chance, whichever side you were on, to win that first-round pick. But that didn't mean you wouldn't stop tanking. And you would have a 50-50 chance at number one pick, and you have a good chance to get whatever player. And they did away with the territorial pick, allowing teams from all over the country to pick whoever they wanted and not miss out on great players. But teams were starting to do some things that were a little fishy. They started this new thing called tanking. Now we know tanking as teams do it in all types of sports. They still do it today in the NBA, despite this lottery. But the most notorious example was in 1984 when the Houston Rockets deliberately were trying to lose games to improve their odds of landing Hakeem Olajuwon, who was thought to be a once-in-a-generation type of player and went on to be a Hall of Fame player that led the Rockets to championships. But is this what we needed? This is something that was starting to happen more and more as teams were seeing how good players were coming out of college and knowing if you got the number one pick, you got a chance to have a player that could change your trajectory forever. So after seeing these teams seem like they were deliberately not playing players, not being competitive towards the end of the season, trying to lose games, they wanted to change that because at this time, TV was starting to get involved, but still, it was largely based on ticket sales. And if you have teams that are not trying to win, you are not going to sell tickets. So the NBA Board of Governors got together and adapted a new lottery system for the 1985 draft. This would eliminate tanking, basically taking away the incentive to try to lose, meaning if you were the worst team with the worst record, it would not guarantee you the first pick. And they planned to make it a live televised moment where sealed envelopes would be placed into a container so you could see the randomness of what was going on. And then May 12, 1985, the NBA held its very first lottery on television. They had 7 picks among the non-playoff teams, and each team with an equal chance at the number one pick. which was a 14.29% chance. So it didn't matter if you missed the playoffs, you had a chance at number one pick. It didn't matter at the end of the season if you were going to make the playoffs or not. You could still play for something, and players would play for contracts. And the event was broadcast live on national TV, adding suspense and transparency to the process. They didn't want it to be behind closed doors and teams thinking, oh, you picked them because you're trying to collude and have conspiracies, which we'll get into that later. 7 envelopes, each containing a non-playoff team's logo, were placed inside a transparent drum, and Commissioner David Stern personally drew out the envelopes one by one, establishing the draft order. And the first envelope drawn would get the first pick, followed by the rest of the order. And that revealed that the New York Knicks, coming off a 24-58 season, had won the very first pick, sparking joy throughout the New York fan base, as that meant they had the chance to select presumed number 1 overall pick, Patrick Ewing, a consensus. Everyone knew he was going to go number 1, and he was a future Hall of Famer, changing the Knicks' trajectory to being a dominant powerhouse throughout the late 80s and into the 90s. The Indiana Pacers got number 2, and they went with Waynesman Tisdale out of Oklahoma, who never made an All-Star game. Number 3 was the Los Angeles Clippers, who selected Benyet Benjamin, a center from Creighton, who also never made an All-Star game. Number 4 was the Seattle Supersonics, who selected Xavier McDaniel, who did go on to be an All-Star out of Wichita State. Number 5 went to the Atlanta Hawks, who selected John Connacht out of SMU, who never made an All-Star. And then number 6 was the Sacramento Kings, who selected Joe Klein out of Arkansas, who never made an NBA All-Star. And the last team to select in the lottery, who essentially lost the lottery, meaning they got the last pick, was the Golden State Warriors, who may have won out as they picked Chris Mullins, who went on to become a Hall of Famer. The first 7 picks wasn't all this draft. In fact, this draft actually went into 7 rounds, which is crazy to think, as today we only have 2. But many of these players wouldn't go on to play in the NBA, but there were a few more Hall of Famers. At pick number 13, the Utah Jazz selected Karl Malone. And at pick number 18, the Detroit Pistons selected Joe Dumars. And in round number 4, the Atlanta Hawks selected Arvydas Sabonis, who has a crazy story about how he made it to the NBA. But what this goes to show you is that the lottery isn't everything, but it's important, as there were 3 other Hall of Famers picked outside of the lottery that year. But in the first 7 picks, there were 2 Hall of Famers. But the big prize, the one that everyone wanted, everyone thought would change the outcome of their team, was Patrick Ewing. Now, there was controversy in this that has come out more recently as people can analyze videos a little bit more. And the thought is the New York Knicks is the biggest market in America. There are more people in New York to root for the team, to cheer for the team. So you have more eyeballs, you can get more butts in the seats. It's what was thought. So by the New York Knicks winning the first pick, they thought something had to be amiss. Now, if you watch the clips of what actually happened, it's on YouTube, you can watch it. There is one thing that's a little different. But if this was what happened, it was 1, well rehearsed, and 2, just kind of crazy that that's how it worked out. So they had 7 envelopes, and they placed them all in a clear cylinder to be rotated around and mixed up before they picked out the lottery. But when they put in the Knicks envelope, it got kind of bent on the side just a little bit. And the thought was they did that so they could know which one was the Knicks, so they could pick that one last. And they also speculated that maybe they actually froze the envelope so that when Commissioner Stern picked out the envelopes, he could tell which one was cold to be the Knicks. Now, this is all speculation. There's nothing to confirm these claims. The bent corner probably just happened. The frozen envelope is just something that people say. There's no confirmation of this. But you know, conspiracies, how they love to rear their head into our everyday life. And there have been some other type of conspiracies because of the lottery. Sometimes luck looks a little odd because the NBA would have wanted that to happen. We had that with the Knicks getting Patrick Ewing, and then we had it with the Orlando Magic being a new expansion franchise getting Shaquille O'Neal. And then again, we had it with LeBron James when he entered the draft, getting picked by his home team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. But luck happens too. It's not all just conspiracies. Conspiracies always come up, and conspiracies aren't always about aliens and the government. They're also about our sports teams and we love. But Patrick Ewing was a great prize. He was an NCAA champion, the player of the year, a 3-time All-American. He was a clear number 1 pick, so clear that at the lottery, they actually had a Patrick Ewing jersey already made. It was a hands down, drop down. This is going to be the number 1 pick. And Ewing went on to sign a 10-year, $32 million contract with the Knicks. And despite battling injuries his rookie year, would average 20 points and 9 rebounds a game, earning Rookie of the Year honors, showing immediately that the Knicks had won the lottery by getting a great player. Ewing went on to play 15 seasons for the Knicks, making the playoffs 14 times, becoming the Knicks' all-time leader in points, rebounds, blocks, steals, field goals made, and played over 1,000 games for the team, averaging 21 points and almost 10 rebounds a game throughout his career, becoming an 11-time All-Star and 7-time All-NBA selection, and being inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2008, and being named to the NBA's 75th anniversary team. But the NBA lottery was not done. See, the problem was that the lottery system did help the tanking narrative that there was no reason to tank, but it also created so much unpredictability. And if you were just unlucky in the worst team in the league, you probably stayed the worst team in the league because you couldn't get that number 1 pick, or you didn't have the best odds to get that number 1 pick. So in 1990, they introduced a weighted lottery system. Teams with the worst records better odds to pick the top pick, discouraging tanking while maintaining the element of chance. Now, this system has continued to evolve over the years, and the reason being that even having the biggest chance of the number 1 pick, people still tank for it, and tanking is something that still happens to this day. So they adjusted the percentages. Now, the top 3 losing teams, so the 3 teams with the worst record in the NBA, get the same odds of winning the number 1 pick. So you have no reason to really bottom out. I want to thank you for listening to today's Daily Sports History. And if you want more NBA draft content, check out the Upswings NBA Draft Podcast, where your hosts Bryce, Cooper, and Stone focus on everything centered around the NBA draft. They aim to bring you top-notch analysis of prospects and every possible angle and discuss how they may impact a team's fit at the next level. We'll put a link in the description below for you to check them out. And if you enjoyed today's Daily Sports History, please follow us on our socials. We're Daily Sports History on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, Threads, Mastodon, LinkedIn, wherever you like to socialize. You can check out our post on there and come back tomorrow for more Daily Sports History.